And here we go. What's up, Reefer Revolutionaries? It's 420 in California. This is Reefer Revolution Live.
But I think in terms of marijuana, and legalization, I think that should be a state issue, state by state. I think it's up to the states, yeah. I'm a states person. I think it should be up to the states, absolutely. You know, I know people that are very, very sick, and for whatever reason, the marijuana really helps them.
Good people don't smoke marijuana.
Well, Reefer Revolutionaries, the good people of Pennsylvania in the legislature seem to be passing a law that looks pretty good, and it includes homegrown. Happy Canniversary, Canada. 1 year in. Looks like you screwed it up. Don't worry, we did too. Maybe Mexico will do it right, because they're on board too. It's the great North American cannabis experiment as Politico goes to pot. And Bernie Sanders congratulates Canada for not invading Vermont.
I'm all in. This is the time to go all in on cannabis.
Now to the issue of candidates and their health. Senator Sanders, I want to start with you. We're moving on, Senator. I'm sorry.
I'm feeling great, but I would like to respond to that question.
I want to start by saying...
And Senator Sanders is in favor of medical marijuana. I want to make sure that's clear as well.
Thank you.
Senator Sanders, this debate does mark this debate.
Not on it tonight. He's not on it tonight. But what's up, Reefer Revolutionaries? I'm Dave Conan. This is indeed Reefer Revolution Live, the show where we spark up, talk about marijuana in the mainstream media, cannabis news. Could you turn off the air conditioner? Thank you. And politics of pot. Welcome, everybody, because when I say we, it's not just me and the AC. It's DC and Coach Chela. And you're on your mic. Say a couple things just so I can see you registering.
Oh, there's a red light on.
Not a red light. A red light?
How about the green light?
Again?
Good green light?
Oh, that's it. You were muted. Now you're unmuted.
Yay, here we go.
Perfect. Yay. What's up,
I got
everybody?
2 doggies with me, too.
Oh, are they on the up there?
2
Are they
doggies
both up there?
on the sofa.
Oh, let's take a look
I'm
if
so
we can
lucky.
see.
It's hard to see Oski because he's so dark.
Well, I've also got your lower third up. Let me see if I can bring it down real quick. They're usually not up there.
No.
And yes, I see a little side of Jack, and Jack kind of hard to see in front of that pillow too, all snuggled up in Oscar. But the canines are among us.
So cute.
Our cute canines. And I'm working with dogs too, and I love dogs. Dogs are great. And we should have more dogs in our little 275 square foot.
Then we really could never
everybody?
move.
Doug 209, welcome to the show. Once again, happy 420, happy 1017, humble Canadian. Mad Goat joining us. We got Ellen Blasey, Alex Cannabosum. Why do I not get that name right? Cannabosum. Ugly Adams, that means Debbie D's not far behind. History Buffering, welcome to the show. Dr. Barry, thank you for the tip on that sports story. We will cover that a little bit at your request. The PGA going crazy down in FLA. What else? Who else? Jerry McGinty. Probably should move to PA from New Jersey because they will have better cannabis laws, plus cheaper to live. I don't know about that second point, probably, and it does look like Pennsylvania may be putting together some good adult use law. We're going to talk about it a little bit today. And who else? Small Tubes, of course, jumping in first, always first. Small Tubes, welcome everybody to the show. Dr. Barry, true story, big week in news from coast to coast. 1 smoke away. Welcome. Doug 209, 420 Fred. Thanks everybody for joining us. Subscribe, get notifications, hit that thumbs up. We are multi-streaming on YouTube, Facebook, Periscope, DLive, Twitch, and Weed TV, the Cannabis Media Network. So wherever you're joining us, drop us a note. I can see most of them in the chat, wherever you are. If we're not shadow banned, suppressed,
whatever,
overshared. But welcome, everybody, to the show. Thanks for joining us. We do this every Sunday, most Sundays at 4:20. And we talk about the cannabis news, as well as whatever we were doing locally here cannabis space, activating ourselves in the. I'm going to activate my endocannabinoid system right now.
Yes.
What are we smoking out there, guys? What are we smoking? Do we know?
I think it starts with a B. It was like
It's
Bliss or no. It's like gelato.
It's like
I
a friend's weed is a friend. A friend's weed is a friend. A friend with weed is a friend indeed.
Yeah, rose by any other name.
That's right.
Would still smoke is great.
I want to know what all this. Oh look, Oscar's moving about.
There he
Getting
goes.
down. Bye bye, Oscar. But whatever it is, we're enjoying it, and I'm mixing it with a little Old Pal and a little. We also have a little Harley Sue. We enjoy a little 1-to-1 CBD to THC. There's a nice change of pace occasionally.
Mm-hmm.
Mix it up a little bit.
I like
Space
it a lot.
Dust. 420 Fred is having some Space Dust. Nice. Electra. Oh, cool. I love all the strain names. The cultivar names. The names of the cultivars. A couple of our cultivars still hanging on over here. We got our skunk, and we've been nursing our little tiny quiet garden. Our little quiet garden. Very quiet. Victory garden. It's a victory garden. Free the plant, free the people.
That's right.
Victory garden. We are dealing with a little powdery mildew. I think milk did the trick.
Yay,
I found a milk
remedy
solution, and it
They
seems
look
to
really
have
nice.
nailed it.
Not that I know anything. Good
Well,
things
you know,
look
I
like.
know I'll tell you some of the
Smells good.
some of the plants look, or, I treated elsewhere better than others. Some didn't get affected. It doesn't look like so. It's quite an experiment we got going, and it looks like we are going to be able to salvage some of our first time grow here, and then we've got some new seeds to try in our little indoor box. So we will continue the Reefer Revolution on Reefer Revolution Live. Where we are trying to free the plant on our little tiny back patio.
With like 3 hours of sun a day.
Well, I've got a couple in the box, so it's what's in the box. Techno Biscuit also in the house. Welcome, Dr. Biscuit. Let's, since Dr. Barry is in the house and he brought it up, let's, I'm going to add this to the Chronicle. Per request to talk about one of our regular guests as well, friend of the show, Dr. Barry Gordon in Florida. But this happened in the world of sports. Matt Every suspended 3 months for drug abuse, and by the PGA. And what was that drug abuse? Well, you can guess. It was cannabis. And he is. Let me find the quote in here that I saw because I just picked up this story. Thanks to Dr. Barry. This is in USA Today.
We don't follow sports so much.
We don't. It's but hey, this is important.
We do have these
we
words as our Google alerts, but for some reason we didn't get this story.
I don't know. I don't know. I probably saw, but there is so much
I didn't
news
get
every
this
week.
story.
And this is from this week. Yes, October 18th, Associated Press. Point Verde Beach, Florida. Matt Every suspended for 12 weeks Friday for what the PGA Tour said was a violation of its conduct policy of drugs of abuse. Every said it was legal prescription for cannabis to treat mental health. Quote, to be clear, I tested positive for cannabis, a drug I do not abuse, and a drug that I have a legal prescription for in the state of Florida.
Wow.
Every said in a statement. So, and Dr. Barry reporting the medical cannabis community in Florida up in arms about this this decision by the PGA.
But having to have to drive, I mean, you can't take it with you. Is the problem. Hopefully that'll spark a national conversation about that.
Indeed.
You can't take your medicine across state lines.
More and more, this is the PGA. This is not even, this is the Professional Golf Association.
Yes, I know, but they travel, don't they? Those golfers. So let's say
the golfers
this
travel.
golfer
Yeah,
was,
you don't want to get rid of the golfers.
This golfer was busted in Florida.
Yes, this PGA suspended him for cannabis. Humble Canadian. It's some of the organizations are more progressive than others in sports. The NBA seems to have. Is it the NBA that seems to have a more of tolerance? NFL seem to be cracks in their intolerance. And I think NHL up there in Canada to the north has been okay, I think, with it, right? If I am correct, humble Canadian. So, these organizations, PGA being obviously not the most progressive organization to begin with, considering its sport is named after keeping one particular half of the community out of playing. Right? Golf.
Yeah.
Yes, gentlemen only. Ladies forbidden.
Yes. Dr. Barry is reminding us that it's not a travel issue. No, I know it's a draconian propaganda bullshit issue, not a travel issue. But there is the travel issue on top of it. Just saying.
Another story that came across. It's sort of been floating around the Twitterverse, and I was trying to find. I just found the video today. But I'm sure many of you follow Dr. Grinspoon, the cannabis doctor. Well, he is a cannabis doctor as well as other, but his father was a cannabis activist. And I thought I had the story up, but I guess I dropped it. I will have to find it. But it was a debate between. It's Vice. Where is it?
You just watched it today.
We got through half of it. It was a debate between Grinspoon and Berenson, who wrote the new Reefer Madness book about comparing psychosis, or rather saying cannabis causes psychosis, and psychosis causes violence, and therefore cannabis causes violence.
Crazy.
And Dr. Peter Grinspoon takes Berenson to task, definitely, in their opening statements anyway, for sure. Berenson's opening statement was all about how cannabis. There's all this evidence that cannabis causes psychosis, and doesn't even get into the major premise of the book that is demonizing people with mental health because it's. Basically, it's not true that people with psychosis are more violent than other people. In fact, they're probably less violent. And also, there's been everybody who watches this show knows I'm a fan of South Park, and they are they're challenging corporate cannabis of MedMen and others, and with their Integrity Farms theme. Throughout the last season it started, I think, and it's certainly picked up steam and has been a focus of Randy Marsh and family. And this week they really knocked me for a loop by either maybe contributing
knocked you for a loop.
Well, it knocked me for a loop. I guess I was stunned. I was aghast. I was slack-jawed on what I was
really
watching.
He was really pissed.
I was angry.
He was pissed and offended.
And I'm not sure if I should be or not.
And it's been kind of a slow burn.
And I'm not going to show the clip because...
No, because that would show it again.
Well, it would also... Viacom hates us. Viacom hates anything. You can't play anything Viacom. They'll copyright strike it. So, but essentially... It was a funny episode in the sense that it was the plant-based theme. It was about this plant-based meat in the school, which was entertaining. And
not just in the school, but like at the they riffed on Burger King's plant-based, the Impossible Whopper. And so it hit home for us because you guys know
Integrity Burgers. That's
most
right,
of you
Alex.
know
Integrity
that
Burgers.
we're vegan or vegetarian.
And I wasn't even. The Integrity Burger part of it was really funny. I enjoyed that. They were trying to. Randy needed to fight. He couldn't sell weed to China anymore because everybody hated that idea. So he had come up with a way. And Towley, of course, comes up with the best idea, and that's to convert their swag into basically
burgers.
Mulch.
Yeah, burgers.
Then he goes to and gets an Impossible Whopper, and he's like, "This tastes like shit." It's plant-based though. It's okay. Eat it anyway. It'll taste better. So he decides to make Integrity Burgers out of his swag, and of course,
They get everybody high.
It gets everybody high.
And everybody loves them.
They hate it, then they love it. And that's all fine and good. And the cattle ranchers revolt. And it's like, you take care of the cows now. Nobody wants cows anymore.
Yeah, the cattle ranchers get really pissed.
Oh, yeah. They're like, okay, we're not going to, who's going to feed these cows? Here, you have
them. And they come after Randy.
And they come right after Integrity Burgers.
And they go to his house.
And he's like, here's 300 cows and nobody wants them anymore. You take
They bring all the cows over to Randy's house.
So of course, what are the cows going to do? They're going to eat the weed.
And shit in the field.
So what are we going to do? We got a problem here, Towley. All these cows are here. Nobody's eating cows anymore. What are we going to do? Well, you know what we got to do? We got to kill the cows. Because they're eating all the weed and shitting everywhere. And then it goes from, that's when my psychosis becomes apparent. My temporary. Did you figure out the mute button?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, good.
And then I just undid it.
Very excellent. Nice work.
Dave got so mad. I didn't even think about it at first. I was just like, oh, whatever. They say, what did they say?
We
have to get really high.
Oh, right. Well, that's the point. Okay, so first they're like, well, we have to kill all these cows.
We have to kill all the cows.
A burger or plant-based burger and eating all of our stuff. But then they're like, well, how are we going to kill all the cows? And then they said, well, what we're going to have to do is get really high. And so they proceed to eat a ton of Integrity Burgers, which is inedible. So it does do something different in the body, right? So they eat all these Integrity Burgers. Now, everybody else that's been eating Integrity Burgers have been like just sitting at stoplights, driving really slow,
having red eyes.
Yeah, having red eyes. Nothing too outside the norm of
nothing beyond the pale.
Beyond the pale of
not like slaughtering 300 cows.
So they get really high so that they can slaughter all these cows, which they proceed to do.
With shotguns.
In various disturbing ways.
Mostly shotguns.
Tarantino-esque.
It was Tarantino-esque.
And I was like, okay, it struck a nerve. It struck a nerve.
Dave got pissed.
Are they propagating the whole cannabis causes psychosis myth and violence? Cannabis causes violence? Or are they making fun of it? Of that trope. Of that trope. By showing this ridiculousness that they're going to, you have to get super, super high in order to go gleefully execute 300 cows. So it was weird how it affected me, right? It was weird. And obviously it's still affecting me to this day.
Oh, totally. He's so mad about it. Like, he'll just, start talking about it out of the clear blue sky. And I'm like, whoa, dude, really? You're that upset about it? Yeah. He's really stuck on it.
Listen, they are very on top. I am huge fan of, and then we watched,
Mean Green 420 is recommending a steak weed rub. Really tasty.
Weed rub. Yeah, yes. And grass-fed beef. See, now that would be the other thing. Randy should have just turned that around into grass-fed beef or something. Literally grass-fed beef.
Yeah.
But, I find their social commentary to be right on point and, very much ahead of the game as far as mainstream media goes on many levels. And that's really, I guess, what they do. They shock people with absurdity beliefs. And they do that across the board with religion and other things too. So I guess looking at it in that framework, that how the absurdity of how you're going to get super high and then do this violent, gives you the ability to forget about it. Or
I think the higher you get, the less likely, higher on cannabis you get, the less likely you are to pick up a gun and be able to kill another being, because you feel such connectedness with all other beings the higher you get.
And to bring South Park back to the Yale debate between Grinspoon and Berenson on cannabis, how cannabis causes violence through psychosis, essentially that's what Dr. Grinspoon said, is that it turns off those receptors or in the brain, affects those receptors in the brain to where you're not going to be more violent. And that it's associated in the fact that people with schizophrenia or psychosis, they self-medicate themselves through all kinds of ways, and cannabis being one of them. So, Blaster Master, we're just discussing the Yale debates versus South Park social commentary this week on cannabis causing psychosis and therefore violence. But that's
we're
that's
getting
where
highbrow in the first hour.
Yes, Alex. Weed equals empathy. Indeed, that's been my experience. He also, Dr. Grinspoon also talks about that couples that use cannabis together tend to have more loving and good relationships.
We're
overall.
pretty loving.
Yeah, and we attributed a lot of it to regular cannabis use.
Listen, we don't have children, and we use cannabis a lot, and we're both good people. Why wouldn't we stay together? It makes perfect sense.
Essentially, it comes down to Chris Rock. Crackhead's going to be with crackheads. If you are on the same page about things such as children, such as freeing the plant, and
spending money,
and whatever it is, and religion, everything. Not being, pulled in by, it took us 4 years to get married because we weren't going to get married to begin with, right?
No.
And then we did just celebrate our 1 year or 22-year anniversary, the same week of Canada's anniversary. So it's a celebration for all of North America.
Yay!
And as might as well get into a little bit of the news.
Yeah.
Since it's already 4:40.
Speaking of North America. We've gotten into the news a little bit already.
We've been sort of talking around the news. None of the stories we've talked about are really in the Chronicle this week. But we want to. Certainly we want to fulfill our viewership's requests, and you can find our news. And if you do want to request a news story that we cover here on Reefer Revolution Live on Sunday, you can drop me a line over at DC420LA on Twitter. That's my handle over there. And where when breaking news comes across my wire, that's where I throw it out during the week at DC420LA. And then eventually it gets over to DC420LA.com, a Cannabis Chronicle.
I think you should write that article.
Which one?
The South Park psychosis.
Oh, you think I should write an op-ed or something?
And the same week as those dudes with the debate at Harvard.
With the debate, yeah. I think that's not a bad idea, actually.
Yeah. Anyway, go on.
Not that I'm looking for a writing job, but
but it's nice to do something with the knowledge that you have.
I'm an a-hole with an opinion.
Yeah, you might as well
Sundays.
share it.
I guess there's plenty of them on Sundays.
Yeah,
so it's okay.
Ain't nothing wrong with that.
So we just put out one newsletter a week, usually Sunday morning or Saturday night, collecting the stories that we found intriguing throughout the week. And that's at DC420LA.com. You can sign up for the newsletter, or you can, if you're watching the video now, it's up all week. We'll check out the stories that we talk about. I dropped a bunch of headlines into the chat this week just to sort of stimulate the conversation. But certainly, if you guys have some other story we want to talk about, let us know about it, and we will throw it in the Chronicle and talk about it on the show. Our big headline this week, there were so many headlines really to sort of talk about, but Politico has dedicated an entire
a whole issue.
I guess it's the whole issue, huh?
Yeah, they had a whole issue with a whole bunch of stories like the AARP had a few weeks back.
Right. Focusing on this trend. The Great American Cannabis Experiment. Cannabis is legal in many U.S. states, or is it? The contradictions between state and federal laws are intensifying. So Politico, getting into the pot game, they have had stories on and off that we covered throughout, coming into 2020. In the roll up to 2020, of course, Bernie. Interesting enough that it was not one of the. I guess it's expected that it was not one of the topics of conversation really at the debate this week. That Bernie is definitely was back at the debate, and yesterday, of course, looked freaking amazing. We were doing other higher work as opposed to watching the rally yesterday, but not necessarily. But we were engaging in one of our other directions.
What do you mean? We talked about cannabis.
That's true. We did talk about cannabis at the virtual dementia tour we did
Jeff
yesterday.
Edelman wants to remind everybody that Bernie mentioned legalization on the stump yesterday in front of a capacity 20,000 inside and an overflow of 5K plus New York City.
If there's a clip of that, I'll give you a wrench and you can drop it in the chat.
Jeff.
Because I haven't been able to had time really to go through Bernie's whole speech, and I'm sure I'm not surprised. I'll just say that I am not surprised that he mentioned it, because he's been, of course, on the legalization train for decades. So and I think he was one of his early bills in the 90s with regards to cannabis, and so the others are all late bloomers, latecomers, many of them complete newcomers in this cycle. Changing their opinions from not so long ago, and believing in, and even some that haven't changed their opinion in the fact that this is obviously going to be an issue for 2020. It's on every ballot. If it's not on a ballot, it's in the legislature, as you will find. One of the stories this week in a Cannabis Chronicle is. Oh, wait a minute. Let me go back to the headlines. They pushed the wrong button. With regards to Pennsylvania, and one of those laws that it's in Newsweek, baby. Newsweek picking up this story. Pennsylvania senators moved to legalize recreational marijuana with new bill. Would become 11th state to do so. And guess what, folks? Home grow is in the bill. Two Pennsylvania state senators introduced Senate Bill 350 in Harrisburg on Tuesday, which would allow adults 21 and older to possess, cultivate, and purchase cannabis from licensed retailers. If the bill passes, Pennsylvania would become the 11th state to legalize marijuana. State Senator Dalen Leach, Democrat Montgomery, Delaware, and Sharif Street, Democrat from Philadelphia, said their legislation is designed to end the ongoing destruction caused by cannabis prohibition and to establish a fair protocol for the use, sale, and regulation of cannabis. Quote, "Wow, this is impressive," Shailene Title of the Massachusetts Cannabis Control Commission told the Philadelphia Inquirer. Quote, "It's largely in line with the trend that each state's legalization law improves upon the states before it. The bill is sure to generate excitement among marijuana reform advocates as it takes into account social justice concerns while ensuring that consumers are put ahead of large cannabis corporations. Home delivery, social use lounges, and personal cultivation are also provisions that aren't always included in other states' marijuana bills." So there you go. Pennsylvania doing it through the legislature, with a couple of senators introducing a bill. And with the weeks that we've been reporting, of course, Lieutenant Governor's county by county tour, asking people how they feel about recreational marijuana, should be adult use. Cannabis really is what it should be. But the states nomenclature is different. But here we go, 21 and older, and the prerequisite for home grow. That's one of our prerequisites for a good law, is that you allow people to grow their own medicine, and why not?
Thailand allows 6.
How many?
6.
6 plants.
In Thailand.
In Thailand.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, that's also, yes. In world news, in the Free the Plant, Free the People world news, not a source we often use here on Reefer Revolution Live or over at the Chronicle. The Washington Times, which is, I think, Sun Young Moon paper. I think it is. I think it's a Mooney paper.
Interesting where cannabis is being covered. Uh-oh.
Well, it's... Oh, did you lose your cherry?
I might have lost
my
cherry.
We have a dude moment over in the... It's okay to podcast and smoke. Just don't lose your cherry in the couch. We got fire danger up here in
Don't burn the house down.
The Santa Anas are back. But meanwhile, Thailand, with a super corrupt government that you could possibly get, I would think, pot in every garden. Thailand takes steps to expand the cannabis industry Thailand has... Here, I'll put my glasses on for this one. Thailand has inaugurated what is being billed as the biggest industrial-scale medical marijuana facility in Southeast Asia with 12,000 plants and will soon allow anyone to grow 6 cannabis plants, quote, in their back gardens like any other herb.
Thank you.
What?
Like any other herb.
Fuck, America.
Thailand.
Sorry. Even the state of the country
like any
of
other
Thailand.
herb. And Mexico.
And now I know Politico calls it the Great American Pot Experiment, but it really is the Great the Great America's Pot Experiment. From Marijuana Moment, Mexican committees unveil marijuana legalization bill ahead of Supreme Court deadline. Of course, the Supreme Court basically last year, as reported here on Reefer Revolution Live and other sources, the Supreme Court said you have to let my people grow, and it is unconstitutional to have cannabis prohibition. And they set a deadline for basically
the
lawmakers. 23rd. October 23rd, right?
Yep.
So under the wire, it looks like they have unveiled a 42-page draft proposal. And here are some of the key provisions. Adults 18 and older can possess cannabis for personal use, cultivate up to 4 plants, and purchase marijuana from licensed retailers. An independent body called the Cannabis Institute would be charged with issuing licenses, setting potency limits. Potency limits. That's really tough. And monitoring the implementation of the law, among other responsibilities. Low-income individuals, small farmers, and indigenous people would have licensing priority. So even in the country of Mexico, taking social equity into account. Strict restrictions would be imposed on cannabis packaging. That includes requiring nondescript standardized containers, blah, blah, blah. Only consumed in private spaces. Only medical cannabis patients would be allowed to purchase infused edibles and beverages. Unregistered seeds or plants would be subject to forfeiture. A 2.0. Seed list. A seed list. Register your seeds. That's interesting.
No pesticides can be used on cannabis plants.
And no pesticides. Bill seeks to improve the living conditions of people living in the United Mexican States, combat the consequences of the problematic use of cannabis, and reduce the crime incidents linked to drug trafficking while promoting peace, the security, and well-being of individuals and communities. So, good job, Mexico, taking up decriminalization, legalization, adult use, and allowing up to 4 plants from your registered seed farm. I don't know. I guess they're going to the government may run the seed bank or something.
Independent.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Mexico's more dangerous than Afghanistan. Yeah. It was like, this week, of course, but it was interesting this week that Mexican governments gave up on El Chapo's son in some town. So, and the avocado, they're into avocados now, guys. So it's like, it's not just cannabis. It's like, oh, you're going to legalize cannabis? Okay. We got legal avocados happening too. We'll be part of that too. You don't think they're going to get a few licenses? We got there's every place that's been giving out licenses has pretty much been caught with some form of corruption in its licensure process. I mean, I guess that's kind of a sweeping statement because the media picks up on it when it happens. And there are a lot of communities and a lot of states that are starting to 11 coming up with Pennsylvania that are doing adult use. And licensing schemes in Canada. That's, of course, going on in Canada. So I'm sure Mexico is going to be just as influenced, if not more, in some ways, in who gets licenses. But there's a story in the Afterburn today, guys. Make sure you stick around. Pretty good Afterburn today. More corruption in Casablanca, more gambling in Casablanca, and the issuance of licenses in California. Mm-hmm. So that'll be in the Afterburn. Continuing on the news this week, let's stay in Canada for the moment. Bunch of stories.
Such a big week.
Bunch of stories, of course, being the 1-year anniversary of its experiment in legalization. You found this story, Chela, in Forbes. Abney Rosner, one of our favorite.
Oh yeah, I love her.
Senior focused riders for cannabis. This week for Canadian seniors, 1 year of legal cannabis has been a game changer. What's the story?
The bottom line is that, they're starting to use it in nursing homes, and holy shit, everything's changing. They're having such, the last paragraph pretty much sums the whole thing up. It's a game changer. It absolutely helps both the residents and the staff. The staff have way less caregiver stress because they're able to manage the anxiety that goes with confusion. Talking mostly about people living with dementia. The whole aspect of decreased appetite can be approached pretty much for the first time. Insomnia can be treated without the need for benzodiazepines. It's one of those things which isn't a panacea, but it really seems to help. It's not a panacea, but it's a panacea.
But it's a panacea.
Pretty much.
Well,
it's pretty much awesome. So full legalization has allowed not only people living on the outside, but people living in nursing homes to be able to start experiencing the benefits of cannabis medicine. That's what full legalization means. So that's exciting.
Well, it's not like the traditional market under legalization. I mean, you have a cost and access situation still with and quality under the new system. I mean, there's like
in the States, but in Canada,
still in Canada with
it's
with
paid
moldy
for,
weed
is it not, by
in the LPs.
I'm pretty sure in nursing homes it's paid for because it's medicine.
Because it's medicine under the system, and as long as it's going through the proper system, but it's so that is great. That is awesome, and they have Medicare, essentially Medicare for all in Canada, right?
Yes.
So there you go. Seniors are definitely benefit under this legalization. Certainly, ones that are in a facility, possibly even. I'm not sure how it is. How is it for them when they're living at home? Can they get their medicine paid for?
I would think so. I mean, I don't know. It doesn't specify in the article.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. If there's still folks going to the traditional market in Canada, despite legalization. $1 billion in sales across the continent or across the country.
Well, what did Jodie Emery say?
I don't have her tweet up.
Oh, that's fine.
So I'm not
Never
100%
mind.
sure. I don't want to misquote her. But $5 to $7 billion still being estimated into the traditional market in Canada, with only a billion in sales. Some of the provinces are doing better than others. With I think it's Ontario that is allowing, hey, if you can smoke cigarettes, you can smoke your cannabis there too, whether you're a medical patient or not. So that's sort of forward thinking. But if you can't grow it, on your own, in your house, in your backyard, it's not legal. And if you're locking people up for the plant, it's not legal. I think that's one of Jodie Emery's upshots, is that if you're still locking people up for cannabis, then it's not legal.
That's true.
Bottom line.
That's true.
So, and every one of the laws that are being passed down here, the cops have got their nose in the trough of taxation. It's like you have to. It's like you have to. It's like a cut. You have to pay off. You have to pay off your protection in the law enforcement. So you're gonna protect our legal business, right? We'll give you this much of the taxes, for education and figuring out how people are high on the roads, and how to arrest and give tickets to cannabis drivers. Which keep getting overturned in court after court. With nope, sorry, smell of weed is no longer a reason for somebody to be searched or charged with anything. And it turns out, guess what? If you call their bluff, sometimes it works.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll see this story, video story in the afterburn. But boy, this really turned over the tea kettle in Tennessee. This coming from News Channel 5 Nashville. In Tennessee, my main upshot of this was, in Tennessee, don't take the plea. Because this woman decided that taking a plea of possibly how long?
It was like 2 years. 28 months or something?
If she got
18 months? No,
well, I think if convicted,
yeah,
she would have gotten. Okay, so let's tell you what. Let's read it. Tennessee woman challenges cannabis charges and wins. Woman refuses plea deal. Marshall County, Tennessee. Marijuana remains illegal in Tennessee, but times are changing. These days, not all cases are prosecuted, as we're finding. We are finding across the country. Is thanks to the hemp laws, they're not finding it very practical to arrest people for cannabis. Going on with the story, a Lewisburg woman was arrested and charged, but fought it, and the case was thrown out. It all began when she was pulled over while driving. I was supposedly a rolling stop. She said the Lewisburg officer had told her he smelled something odd and threatened to search the vehicle. So she handed him a small baggie of cannabis. Enough for 2 or 3 joints maybe, said Cashion. And just like that, she was charged with drug possession. Prosecutors told Cashion she faced a potential 11-month, 28-day sentence and should agree to a plea deal. They basically told me I had no defense.
I knew there was a 28 in there somewhere.
Somewhere. 11-month, 28 days, I guess, for the amount.
It was less than a gram, yo. I can't squeeze 2 or 3 joints out of that. I don't know.
2 or 3 joints from a gram?
That's what she should go to jail for.
No, are you kidding? If she can get 2 or 3 joints out of a gram of weed.
Those are pinners.
Pinners, and that's what does
like
it for.
Toothpicks.
Fantastic. So she uses it for a sleeping aid. She's like, I'm no dealer. I'm no addict. I use it for pain. To get off of opioids. I can't go on like this. I'm living in a fog, sleeping all the time. This is on the opioids, and still hurting. The cannabis worked, weaning her off opioids, relieving her pain, but also landing her in trouble, legal trouble. And everybody thought she was crazy. Kashon's attorney had taken note of Operation Candy Crush in Rutherford County, where charges were dropped after prosecutors could not prove the level of psychoactive THC in cannabis gummies. It must be higher than 0.3% illegal. The TBI does not test misdemeanor cases. Less than half an ounce of cannabis. She had less than a gram. In her case, the prosecution couldn't prove she had an illegal substance, and the drug charges were dismissed.
Less than a gram, yo.
So they figured out
FTP
that, what does it say? In her case, the prosecution couldn't prove she had an illegal substance because the TBI does not test misdemeanor cases of less than a half an ounce of cannabis.
Which we discussed previously.
In Tennessee?
Here, us.
Oh, here,
together.
us.
Yeah, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation does not test cannabis under half an ounce. So
they tried to intimidate her to take the plea, saying she didn't have a defense, even though she had less than the amount that they could prove that they would prove in the bureaucracy of it all that she had any cannabis. So there you get, bravely standing up to the Tennessee, the TBI,
Tennessee
the
Bureau of
Tennessee
Investigation.
authorities, and largely because hemp.
Yep, because hemp.
I'm going to say keen observation of the hemp laws and the laws of the state with regards to when do they test, and they can't test, or they can't get a reason. So there you go.
Don't have enough money to test
in Tennessee,
everything.
don't take the plea if you've got under a half ounce.
Mm-hmm. Under half an ounce. Plus, it just goes to show you more of outgrow the government ideas. If you overwhelm the government, then they can't really touch you.
Exactly. And it's kind of ironic that, or weird that it's just a side story because often we pick up psilocybin news across the country, as many other outlets that cover Schedule I substances like cannabis do. But the DEA seemed to find a reason to bust up people for for mushrooms in Denver after they just decriminalized it, which I find to be really fascinating, considering it was such a low incident of crime anyway in Colorado, And of course, other cities and states are following suit and trying to decriminalizing that helpful plant, which has been lied about and stigmatized for right along with cannabis since the scheduling of those substances. An completely beneficial plant or earthbound substance that can provide relief for many of today's ails, and especially with the craziness that's happening. Everybody needs a little mental health help, and both cannabis and psilocybin mushrooms have proven, despite the reefer madness of people like Berenson, people that have it's probably an endocannabinoid deficiency, therefore they're drawn to cannabis. That's my theory. I'm not a doctor. Nope. But that's my theory, and I'm sticking to it. And apparently the theory of don't take a plea in Tennessee for under a half ounce of weed is a good one, too. Although maybe offering it up to begin with would be against the advice of the Pot Brothers at law, basically submitting to a search. But I think she basically from the very beginning believed that it's a plant for my health, and as the PGA should FO on their fascism with players using cannabis for their health, mental health, or other physical health. She stood up for her rights and won.
There are two other stories in the Chronicle that are related to that one.
Yes.
The Leafly story, jurors revolt, refuse to consider felony charges for cannabis.
And this was a different story.
In New Orleans.
In New Orleans.
Yeah. It's on the headlines page.
That's right.
On the second column toward the bottom. And then under that, in the Charlotte Observer, pot legalization plan would subsidize patients and pay police. I love both of those stories, and that's in New Mexico, the Charlotte Observer.
Well, yeah, paying police again. They always got to have
they always got to take their cut, man. You gotta always pay the police.
Well,
but I love that it's going to subsidize low-income patients, and so that's really nice about New Mexico, that they've observed where other states have gone wrong and screwed stuff up, and in California we really screwed low-income patients, and luckily in New Mexico, if they go with this plan, it's a plan that'll help support low-income patients, so that's kind of nice. I read that. And I love that in New Orleans that the jurors were like, no. So,
well, let's
know your rights of where you are, and always try to shut the fuck up so that you give your attorney the best shot possible.
Well, that is certainly the number one advice, is don't give them any more evidence than they need.
Yeah.
And get your attorney involved right away. But reading from that story in Leafly, jurors refused to consider felony charges for cannabis. A handful of jurors did a remarkable thing in a New Orleans courtroom last week. I hope you'll think about it next time you're called for jury duty. On Tuesday, Jabbar Kenzie, a server at the city's famous French Quarter restaurant, Antoine's, went on trial for possessing an ounce of cannabis on Bourbon Street. An entire novel could unfold around that premise. If you've ever dined in Antoine's, and I have, you know it's a singular New Orleans experience. The 175-year-old experience, blah, blah, blah. Let's get to the story. Jury selection. All right, Kinsey's attorney told the advocate that the jurors sent a clear message to Canzanaro. I think the district attorney's office heard the jury's sentiments, given the current climate in our country with regards to marijuana. I think this was an appropriate solution. So let me see if I can find the quote here. Okay, by the end of the afternoon, 20 of the 25 potential jurors had been dropped. No more were available from the daily pool. So Judge Waldron told Matt Sledge, a reporter from The Advocate, that a significant number of jurors had been dismissed by the prosecutor because they refused to consider a felony charge for cannabis. Waldron said many jurors spoke up about the injustice of Louisiana's archaic marijuana laws. So there you go. Could not even get to a courtroom because the jurors refused to hear the crime. They had to just basically be dismissed.
That's not a crime.
That's not a crime for under an ounce of cannabis.
I love it.
In Louisiana. So we do have the power under our current system in the states that we are, with some common sense people on juries. Plea deals are basically a factory for the DA of whatever state or whatever county, city, to easily get people through the system and churn people through. It's a scheme, just like anything else. Plea deals, the defense attorney, hack defense attorneys make the deals, sell it to the people. They figure it's the best way to go because they don't want to go to trial. But they're going to lie to you. They're going to, but they don't want to have to go to trial. They don't want to have to actually go and do their job. So you got to know, stop, drop, and shut the fuck up. Yes, Jason Tube 22 agreed. Be polite, but don't discuss your day and invoke the fifth if you're detained. That's essentially the rule. And don't lie and don't give up any information that you don't have to. You got to think, depending on the state you're in California, we don't have to legally submit to roadside. If we're over 21, under 21, it's a different story. But if you're over 21, you are legally permitted to turn down a roadside sobriety test. So a lot of people don't know that.
In California.
So they can, at that point, they can decide to take you in, and you have to do a blood test, otherwise you'll lose your license. But, they're not going to want to take you in, especially if you're not impaired. And that's ultimately what they should be looking at anyway. Impairment levels. This was this whole fazzool. It's like, well, we need to we need the money so we can re-educate our police.
Or dogs.
On how
dogs especially.
Well, the dogs, the dogs are toast. The dogs are useless now.
That's bullshit. You can teach dogs to smell other things.
Go find bombs. You like to find that stuff too. And apparently there's a lot of that happening locally. So yeah, maybe go find some bombs. And leave our cannabis alone. But it looks like more and more communities are saying, listen, if you can't figure out a way to test this stuff or prosecute this stuff, we're not going to arrest. Well, maybe they'll still arrest, but they're not going to prosecute. The jurors are going to find reason. Always go for a jury. Always go for a jury. All you need is one, right? All you need is one to agree with you. But don't get to that point. Now, should she have offered up her cannabis? Some would say no.
Everyone in this house.
Everyone would say no. But
everyone in this chat would say no.
Know the laws. Pot Brothers would say, know the laws of your state. But nationally, the best, selection is, the best choice is to shut the fuck up and, make them work for it and be polite. And then call a lawyer. So, but good on you, jurors in Louisiana, and a smart medical cannabis patient in Tennessee took on the system and prevailed. You can find all those stories over at Cannabis Chronicle. Another big story this week, of course. This really kind of hits. We've reported on this story throughout the year and longer, or certainly the folks behind this story. Dr. Sue Sicily and Scottsdale Research Institute sued the DEA after they completed their trial, 7-year trial with smoked cannabis, and found that the monopoly on NIDA's monopoly on growing swag in Mississippi for research is bullshit. It's considering there's over 24 applications or more for good cannabis growers to get permitted to create cannabis for research. And they sued the DEA. And the court found that the DEA needs to provide remedy. Essentially, they have to come up with a reason or start approving these applications. And unfortunately, it looks like the federal court has decided that they have answered the call and they have fulfilled their requirement. The story from Marijuana Moment. Federal court dismisses suit against DEA over marijuana growing applications. Kyle Yeager writing A federal court dismissed a lawsuit against the DEA on Friday after determining that the agency had fulfilled a requirement to process applications for research-grade marijuana manufacturers. DEA was sued in June after declining to act on the more than 24 applications that it received for approval to cultivate cannabis for research purposes. It's been more than 3 years since the agency first announced it was opening the process to consider additional producers. The suit brought by Scottsdale Research Institute argued that the marijuana grown at the University of Mississippi, currently the only facility that's federally authorized to cultivate the plant, is of poor quality. Let's say that again. Does not reflect the diversity of products available on the commercial market and is therefore inadequate for clinical studies. Jumping forward, in July, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit ordered DEA to respond to the legal challenge within 30 days. And as that deadline approached in August, the agency published a notice in the Federal Register stating that it was taking steps to approve the pending applications. But due to the volume of the applications, the DEA said it would have to develop alternative rules to process them. Like, what the fuck have you been doing for the last how many years? The court dismissed our case because, according to the court, DEA gave us the relief we had requested. Attorney Matt Zorn was involved in the suit, told Marijuana Moment. Last week, on October 11th, the DEA published a correction in the notice it had previously published on August 26th, 2 days before it had to respond to the court's date. The court said this second notice meant there was nothing more the court could give us. The court also declined to maintain jurisdiction over the case because it did not find a history of chronic delay or bad faith in the record. But it also indicated that we could return to court if the DEA significantly delays going forward. So, the cannabis can, successfully kicked down the road by the DEA and the Federal Court of Appeals in D.C.
Surprise, surprise.
And they'll have to bring it up again if they delay even more, because now they have to create a whole new system on how to approve these farmers. That these things have been, nobody's been working on that since they've been sitting in the inbox. Maybe we should come up with a way to process these a little better. I don't know.
Well, it's really surprising that everybody knows that cannabis is coming online. Everybody knows it. So wouldn't it behoove people to start working on how they're gonna deal with it as it comes online for them? Like, for instance, nursing homes in California. Wouldn't it be smart if they all started talking about how cannabis impacts seniors and, like, what's going on in Canada? Ooh, hey, what's going on in Canada? How's that going to work out for us? Hey, when that stuff comes on board, we should be ready to do it. I think that would be wise.
Well, having a plan in place, which, and within our realm, the state of California has put a plan in place for, for the state-run places, or at least state-funded or non-federally funded private organizations. Assisted livings.
Yeah.
There's no reason. Oregon has a plan to export their cannabis that they keep having so much of every year.
Even though it's not legal.
To other states. That's right. Even though they're just waiting. It's like this. We were ready to go. As soon as the feds get out of the way, we are ready to export our cannabis to another state that's legal. So, a lot can be done with just the feds getting out of the way without any significant increase in harm to what's already going on. In fact, it'll probably, make things even better as far as, traditional market exportation of cannabis from state to state wouldn't need to happen if they could take all that extra weed and actually legally transfer it to another state that sells cannabis. That would lower the prices, which is, that's one of the big things going up in Canada. After a year, they were promised lower prices with legal cannabis. Mm-hmm. That's one of the promises of legal cannabis everywhere it happens.
Well, there's that outfit coming out with super cheap weed.
That's right. And of course, one of the companies is jumping on that, going to produce basically, accessibly priced cannabis. They will basically undercut the traditional market. Or at least keep it below
Walmart of weed.
And then there's companies in California like Old Pal that are trying to keep prices down
Old Pal is a multi-state company.
That's right.
Not just California.
So have a plan for cannabis legalization because it's coming to a state near you. It's so funny. In the afterburn, which is coming up, guys, stay tuned for the afterburn. We're about to roll into it. But you'll see across the country as legalization comes on board, whether it's medical or adult use, everybody seems to go through the same cycle of growth, of change, of remorse, of anger, of all the stages of cannabis legalization in your state, because, apparently that's the only way we can do it right now. Despite, just a couple of more stories to wrap it up before we move on to the afterburn, guys. Up there on the Hill, it looks like that Safe Banking Act is going to make it through. Some estimates being we could have that passed within 3 to 6 months and signed. And gee, what would be going on around the time if, say, in 6 to 9 months, the Safe Banking Act is on somebody's desk? And it might just be. Key GOP Senate chairman outlines changes he wants for marijuana banking bill, reported in Marijuana Moment. So the GOP, Mike Crapo, has got some ideas, but you make those happen, and they might end up voting on it. And the estimates are that it definitely could be on the president's desk within the year. So that's happening up there on the Hill. And also up there, it looks like the VA. We might be having some cracks in the VA. Well, maybe at least, everybody that seems like as soon as people get out of government, they find cannabis. It's like they find Jesus.
Well, there is a revolving door between industry and government. Cannabis happens to be a new industry.
Why doesn't Jilly Love have a wrench?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean you to take a whole sidebar like that.
Well, I see. When I'm highlighted, it grabs my attention.
Yes,
and
I didn't mean for you to.
So sometimes the only way you can. Sometimes the only way you can talk to me during the show is dropping a chat in there.
Yeah, but I didn't expect you to say it out loud.
When the hairs are 90% done, thank you, Jilly Love. That's obviously, yeah. I'm thinking I need to start collecting some of my guys.
Hairs?
Plants. But we digress. I think Jilly Love is talking about growth.
Okay.
Of plants. I'm thinking, unless it's something weird conversry when the hairs are 90%.
No, she is. She was
unless
asking
she's talking about dying hair.
Plants not done by the last full moon, ? And I wrote that we had a powdery mildew thing going on, but the milk seems to have fixed it. So next full moon, ? And then she wrote something else about another thing. And then when the hairs are 90% done.
Gotcha.
That's where we are.
But I don't know what they look like when they're 100% done. So how does that...
Yeah, I don't know. It's our first time in this recent
Listen, they
moment.
they're feeling sticky and thick and smelly, and I'm going to flush the skunk and maybe one of the other ones. But several of these guys, the one over there by you, that Skittles.
She's so pretty.
I think that's Blue Skittles.
She's so cute.
She's doing really well as far as no powdery mildew, nothing.
Bouquet.
So yeah, we're trying it all out, man. The Reefer Revolution experiment continues, and the VA, former VA secretary who oversaw marijuana research blockade, now backs cannabis studies for veterans. Thanks for jumping on board. Well, now that you can absolutely do nothing about it except for lobby for a cannabis firm, which I'm sure is where he's headed. Is that necessarily the case? Quite frankly, I did not get into this story, but I'm betting he's headed for a cannabis firm somewhere down the line. But this is former Secretary David Shulkin, who I think had sort of limited support for cannabis when he was in there. It says, I believe the VA should be involved in research and anything that could potentially help veterans improve their health and well-being. He says that appears to represent a notable departure from the position he held while he headed the department. For example, VA under his leadership refused to provide assistance to an Arizona-based research facility that was soliciting veterans to participate in a federally approved clinical trial looking to the potential benefit of cannabis in the treatment of post-traumatic stress disorder. That being the same trial that was at the heart of the lawsuit to the DEA by the Scottsdale Research Institute and Dr. Sue Sisley So he was one of the apparently roadblocks to that getting more. That was one of the big problems, was getting veterans that would not be persecuted, essentially, for participating in this trial. Because many were afraid, and still are, of losing their benefits, VA benefits, for using cannabis medicine. And of course, despite that, more and more are using it because guess what? It works. It gives them relief from PTSD. And quite frankly, we've had enough of this. We've had enough. When there is so much benefit from this plant that we're done with you. We're done with your laws. We're done with your dragging your feet, your doctors wanting research, more research. And then once that research happens, it'll be another decade before they start to implement it. And nobody's got that kind of time, especially people with dementia, autism, hundreds and hundreds of seizures a day, PTSD, suicide every day, hundreds.
Who wants to live with anxiety? Who wants to live with headaches or stomach aches? Or who wants to live uncomfortable? Come on.
So we're outgrowing you. We're using it despite you. Those that can will play your game in legalization and over regulation and over taxation. They'll play your game. And one other story quickly before we're done.
Yeah.
Green rush. You mean green crash? It seems folks were got a little exuberant as over. What did Greenspan call the crash? Over exuberance or something, I don't know, but capitalism and investors. But this one story sort of encapsulates a lot of what was, cannabis stocks started last week, of course, crashing. Basically, these over projections on sales, and MedMen had a disastrous deal fall through. One company, I think, was in the black. Afria, I believe. Everybody else lost money, and their stocks crashed. And not uncontroversial, Weed Maps, of course, dealing with their promotion of unregulated, unlicensed shops, them acquiescing there, pumping a ton of money, $10 million, into an amazing promotional facility, a museum of weed in Hollywood,
where Blunt Talks will be next week.
Excellent use of space. Glad to see Weed Maps, or rather the Weed Museum, is still going on and still providing education. They've been doing regular talks. The installations are amazing. The education is amazing. It's a phenomenal resource here in Hollywood.
But they are getting a lot of shit.
They've been getting a lot of shit because it cost them $10 million and they just laid off 100 employees.
No, they're getting a lot of shit because they work with unlicensed places.
Well, yeah, that's one of the issues that they've been dealing with. This is basically saying we're not going to do that anymore. Here, look, we made this great thing. We're cool now, and but unfortunately, it looks like they overextended themselves, and they got a little bit too big for their britches, and they've now had to lay off 100 employees. So the green rush, I think everybody, a little bit over exuberance for as far as politicians and their tax revenues, as far as corporate cannabis wanting to jump in and get on this. Hey, listen, look at all that money that's being made. We can make it. We can get on board. Now is the time to be all in on cannabis, as John Boehner says at the beginning of our show. So I think they are having a little bit of a reality, finding out the traditional market is not going anywhere as long as you're going to overtax, overregulate, not allow people access to the market, fair and access, or even supported access as far as social equity goes, reparative access, if you will, to this new industry, which hasn't happened in over 100 years. Well, I guess maybe, you could call the .com, but that was really, it wasn't an industry. That was a bubble. This is an industry. It's been around for a long time, And they're finding, as you'll see in the afterburn, the reemergence of the hemp industry, which is, quite frankly, the real green rush. Is hemp, agricultural hemp, the real green rush? Mm-hmm. Is cannabis going to go back sort of on the back burner, and adult use? It's going to be around, but it won't really be the main focus in another 10 years. And then will industrial hemp and its disruption, will that be the green rush? It sure looks like it right now, that we have the beginning of an amazing agricultural resurgence across the country with industrial hemp. And it could, quite frankly, destroy outdoor pot cannabis growing. So it's a dynamic time in the cannabis sativa world and the cannabis sativa plant. Veterans Cannabis Advocacy Group, thanks for joining in. Support Weedmaps, pioneer cutting edge app. And folks, listen, it's been, Weedmaps been around for a long time. It is one of the best apps out there. They have been providing much more education and, try to navigate this corporate cannabis world out here in California. But Prop 64 has many victims, patients, a lot of these companies that were early on providing access for patients, that people you could always, you could find your licensed, locally licensed collective, nonprofit collective on Weedmaps, and find good product, find organic product, find conscientious cannabis THC vaping. For years, folks, we've been vaping THC oil for a long time in California, and the nonprofit model in California was eliminated in California with Prop 64 under the Tax and Regulate scheme, and we just barely got part of compassion back to California with Governor Newsom signing, as we reported breaking news last Sunday, that Governor Gavin Newsom signed SB 34, allowing companies to donate cannabis without state taxes to organizations like Weed for Warriors. So a little bit of compassion coming back to cannabis, but still no report on the nonprofit model that was supposed to be happening.
And
under
a
Prop
veto
64.
for people who are dying to be able to use cannabis.
That's right. A way for people in the last stages of life, access to cannabis, he vetoed.
If they're in a nursing home or a hospital, they are not allowed access to cannabis medicine. That's insane. And he said it was because it's on the Schedule 1.
That's right.
He could have signed it with a caveat that when it's legal, they can have it in any facility.
And that's
like
right.
Oregon did.
And that's right, Jelly Love. Plastic is oil and petrochemicals hemp can replace. Everything made of plastic can be made from hemp. And that will be the big disruptor if they allow it. If they allow it to happen. Let's imagine the wars we could end. Imagine the wars we could end if we didn't need to get plastic from oil, because most of our oil does go to plastic. It does. Our lives are completely. Imagine. That was a thought experiment I was doing recently. Is imagine if hemp had won back in the day, and DuPont and Hearst had lost, and hemp had won. There would be not 1 to 5 part plastic in the ocean that we have today, and in everything, helping to destroy our planet. Everybody, if you're so inclined, hit that thumbs up. This has been Reefer Revolution Live, the first hour, and we are going to get into the afterburn, folks. So make sure you subscribe, get notifications. We will be back.
We got a thumbs down.
What's that?
Awesome.
We got a thumbs down.
Whoop, whoop.
Wow.
Hey, we know we're doing something right when we get a thumbs down. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Well, whatever thumb you want to give it now, because we are gonna move on to the afterburn, where we hotbox the mainstream media and their coverage of marijuana from coast to coast in the MST 420 theater. So stay tuned for the afterburn, guys. This has been Reefer Revolution Live, multi-streaming on YouTube, Facebook, Periscope, DLive, Twitch, and Weed TV, the Cannabis Media Network. You can follow me over on DC420LA on Twitter. Also follow Reefer Rev Show on Instagram, on all the socials, Reefer Rev Show or DC420LA. Stay tuned, guys. The afterburn is up next. Free the plant, free the people. Pot for peace. Hit that thumbs up.
Stay tuned and refresh.
Refresh, share. That's what we love. You can be a Patreon too.